Good evening. I'd like to start by opening the meeting of December 6th for the Board of Selectmen here at the Boyden Elementary School Auditorium. We begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to start our meeting with our some new business from the update from the town administrator.
Sure. The Board of Selectmen, excuse me. The Board of Selectmen is aware that our solid waste recycling contract is up at the end of this fiscal year. One of the items that I'd like some direction from the board as to whether you'd like to keep the status quo regarding solid waste and recycling, or whether or not you'd like to switch to these barrels. If you could screen over to there to look at them, as to what they would look like. I'll try to speak up. And basically, right now, what you have before you are the figures that the cost benefit is to keeping the status quo versus changing over to the automated barrels. We're not proposing a trash fee or recycling fee for the town. It's just a matter of, does the board want us to switch over? Most of the surrounding towns have these type of barrels and the automated system in place. It's about a difference of $127,000 on top of next year's fiscal budget. If we keep the status quo, if we make a change, it's only about a difference of $20 or so thousand. So just if you could digest these figures this week, let me know as to how you'd like to proceed. I'd like to do something probably in the beginning of January, let the residents know that this is what we're considering, ask for some feedback, maybe put it out on social media, make sure that the public has plenty of knowledge that it's coming up for discussion, and so we can figure out what to do for next fiscal year. Any preliminary questions?
Any comments? Do you want?
So people, we're going to put those out in the hallway. If you can just look at them and take a. Thought we'd bring them in tonight since it was going to be a bigger crowd here than maybe our regular selectmen meeting, which only bring 1 or 2 people. And so if you can take a look, thought it would be a good opportunity for people to actually see them. And like the town administrator said, we're not going to discuss it tonight. There'll be plenty of opportunity to be heard on it later. We got other things on tonight, but we thought we'd let you see them. So they'll be at Town Hall at the Board of Health office after this, and in a little while we'll put them outside so that you can poke around with them on your way out tonight.
Mark?
Yeah, I would just agree with Selectman Salvatore that on the night that we do discuss this, I would like to make sure we get a chance to let everybody know and people can come in and talk about it. I've heard a lot of good things from nearby towns about using the automated pickup and the reduction in trash and the increase in recycling. I think those are all great topics, but I want everybody to have a chance to weigh in before we get to a vote on that. So thank you.
My comments are the same as my fellow board members. I also think it's important to know that our administrator and our Board of Health agent are looking at alternative methods and cost savings for trash pickup. I think that's something that's very important to know that administration is doing. Doesn't mean, we looked at this last time, we didn't go with it. But it's good to know that they're doing their job and going down all the avenues to make sure that we decide to do what's best for Walpole. So we'll put it on a future agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Then, next.
If I could, since we have a few minutes, I'd like to just brief the board, brief the public who are here tonight regarding the tax hearing as to why we're having it this evening. And I'll speak up as loud as possible. I'm sorry we don't have microphones, if that's okay with you. Mm-hmm. Okay. What we have tonight is the reaffirmation of the Board of Selectmen's vote that was taken in November. The reason we're asking for the board to reaffirm this vote is the state, the Department of Revenue, basically is requiring us to recertify the vote because prior to when you first certified it, the state, when you first voted on the tax rate, the state did not technically certify the vote first. So they want to be the first one to certify the vote. Again, we're not changing the rate that was voted on back in November. It's the same rate that's being proposed. That's what the Board of Assessors are here for. no changes there. They just want us to go back on the record, have a formal hearing again, and vote that matter. That's why this is on the agenda, folks. And I know we have to open it specifically at 6:45. They present the information to the Board of Selectmen and go from there. So that's why the rate-setting hearing is on here.
So fair to say that it's a Department of Revenue policy change from the way we voted it in the past. So we're just going to be reaffirming a vote that we took in November.
That is correct.
Okay. But we have to wait. So, anything else that we can do?
Go on to the other couple of new business items. I could talk about the spring warrant, if you'd like.
We can do any of these, can't we?
Yeah.
Do you want to just do the votes, the Springtown warrant?
Yeah, sure. And I can brief you on what we have now, so that's fine.
Okay. So do you want me to make a motion?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to open the Springtown meeting for May 1st, 2017. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion?
Just a couple of quick items,
All in favor?
just under discussion.
Oh, okay.
If you don't mind.
Sure.
Right now, we have approximately 24 articles. 5 of them are collective bargaining agreements that are up at the end of this fiscal year. Several of them relate to the budget. 4 or 5 of them relate to the capital budget, which I just received in this week. I'm going through right now, organizing and prioritizing the requests as they come in. Capital Budget Committee will be meeting probably starting in February, and to review all the requests, make the recommendation to the Finance Committee, I'm guessing sometime in March. So that's kind of where we stand with this now. That could change, a couple more could be added, but roughly I'm guessing around 23 to 25 articles is what we're seeing right now, unless there's anything else out there.
Fair. Anyone want to add? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then,
And what we could also do as part of that motion, Madam Chair, is vote to close it on January 31st.
so moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion?
Good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And to the town administrator to sign the Compass contract?
Sure. What you have before you is a contract amendment with Compass Project Management. They are the management company that's overseeing the construction of the police station, senior center, and the fire station. This is to amend their contract. Their prior contract didn't go as far as if we were actually to get the funding that's in place. This memorializes that, and we are, it's actually under the figures that were presented to town meeting. I'm pleased with that. They're also going to serve as the clerk of the works for the senior center.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the Compass contract amendment.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
300. And I'll make a motion to renew all liquor licenses, including common victual license, all alcohol.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Cindy, was everything in order?
Yes, everything's in order.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 300. And hold the last one till we have a full board.
Yeah.
And
Which one's that?
the consent
Oh.
agenda items. These will be voted as one motion. Do you want to make the motion?
I move that we approve this consent agenda items, and I will read them. Grant permission for JCR livery service to operate within the town of Walpole's boundaries. Approve the request to hold St. Patrick's Day Parade on March 17, 2017, and use the town's platform on the center of the common for Friends of St. Patrick. And that request is from the Friends of St. Patrick. Request from the Recreation Department to hold the annual Walpole Day event and parade on May 13, 2017. Request from the Recreation Department to hold concerts on the Common in 2017 as listed. And acceptance of gifts to the Fire Department. Ms. Spreacher, $50. Ms. Spreacher, Mr. and Mrs. Logan, Ms. Coyne, and Hollingsworth and Vos. Hollingsworth and Vos generously donated $1,000 To the police department, Hollingworth and votes, another $1,000. The Junior Women's Club of Walpole, $500. The Veterans Department, Walpole Wine and Spirits, an $80 donation, and the Junior Women's Club of Walpole, a $5,000 donation to the Veterans Department. And I move to approve all of those items.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 300. And those are done.
Who do we have?
Could do minutes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 9th, 2016.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
None.
All those in favor?
Aye.
300. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for November 15th, 2016.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 300. And is there anything else that you have on your report?
No, I want to get to that afterwards. No, I mean, just have a minute to the public hearing. I want to start anything
Okay.
early.
Okay, we have 1 minute till we start the public hearing. I know.
Where's the clock?
Maybe they don't want the kids to know what time it
No.
is.
Oh my God, how many
Where's
trees?
6:45?
I have 6:45.
6:45.
Near here.
Just a minute. All right, the hour being 6:45, we will open the public hearing to set the tax rate for the fiscal year 2017 classification hearing to vote the residential factor. That one's for TV, and the other one is for the auditorium.
Is this on?
I guess it's not. So,
I move to open the public hearing.
I'll second that.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No. Thank you. Here he is.
There we go.
Thank you. Unexpectedly, we're back.
Yes.
And I apologize for it. We followed the procedures that we've followed in the past. There's a new commissioner at the Department of Revenue that insists that we now have to have final certification of property values before he will accept a vote by the Board of Selectmen on any potential shift on the tax rate. So that's why we're back. I would, going forward, we'll continue to do exactly the same thing that we have done in the years past. It's just that if we have not received final certification on that night in the future, we'll just ask you to continue the hearing until we get the final certification.
Good plan.
As we talked before, it's a really delicate scheduling problem because we have to give the state time enough to approve the values, but we can't delay it so long that we can't get the tax bills out. So we would ask that you basically reaffirm the vote that you took the last time for the 1.275 shift with a residential factor of 95.7503.
Very good. With that being said, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye?
Aye, sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
I think, yeah. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt a shift of 1.275 with a residential factor of 95.7503 for fiscal year 2017.
Second?
Just to, this is basically how much we're going to charge the commercial and industrial rate versus the residential rate. It's exactly the same as it's been in the past, and It's a procedural item at this point that we've, just fixing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 300.
Thank you, see you next year.
Next year.
Thank you.
And we need you to sign.
All of us, everyone?
Yeah.
I'm sure.
You know me.
All right.
No. Those are the picture I sent my dad. So one wants to, yeah.
No, we're just gonna wait till 7 now? or-
No, I can go into my report, but we gotta stretch it out a little bit.
Okay.
Did we go to vote quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I could get this. I do have a lot of things to cover on this, so.
You have a lot to cover?
Fair amount.
You don't want to make it too much, they can't hear you. And they'll
Yeah, I
just
know,
keep
I'm gonna
going.
have to.
You wanna take the mic up here?
Thank you.
Why don't we just take the mic up here until it opens? We can do that.
Yeah, do you want that? Do you want to hold the mic until it opens?
Okay.
Will you hand us that mic? That big, yes.
Will you turn it off?
No, can you, does it come out?
Just the mic.
Comes out.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I have a few items to cover on the town administrator update. First of all, I'd like to let you know that Chairman Kraus is on his way. He's been texting me. He expects to be here around 7:45, so we will have 4 members of the Board of Selectmen here tonight, folks, for this important discussion. Just to cover a few issues. Memorial Pond, the design and permitting meeting was held last month, where we've started our whole process with that. The $80,000 that was appropriated at town meeting back in October. I'll continue to keep the board updated on that matter. Recently, Cindy, myself, the police chief have had some complaints regarding hunting on town property and traces that there are hunters using the town forest to hunt deer and other wildlife. We're going to be going forward with putting up some more signs around the town forest, Adams Farm, some other town-owned land, just to make sure that people know it's not allowed on town property. They have to be very careful with it, because some of the properties that it is allowed on, it just butts right up to the town forest specifically. So that's a major issue. I want to make sure we're covered. We don't.
Do we have a particular area that they've been in, or?
We've gotten a couple of reports that they've been in the town forest, and there's a couple of traces where they're videotaping the animals coming and going. So the chief and I are really watching that closely, along with John Splain.
Just one thing, if you're putting signs up, can you also put up a sign that says there's a coyote in the town forest near South Street, and just maybe some kind of information as to how to behave if you run into the coyote? I did look it up, and it said they don't usually go after people, but they will go after small dogs if you're walking a small dog, so you want to keep your dog close and make yourself bigger and louder, and they're supposed to go away. But I actually saw a coyote with an animal in its mouth run into the town forest a few days ago.
I'll make sure to include that. The State Ethics Commission is offering some free training in February, March, and June. Please let me know if you'd like me to sign you up for any of these dates. Myself and Tom will probably be going to 1 or 2 of these. Public records law, next selectmen's meeting, the town clerk is coming in. We're going to provide you with some information. Basically, the public access records law is changing effective January 1st. We're going to need to appoint record access officers and regular record access officers. This is an unfunded mandate through the state that could cost the town a considerable amount of money, as far as what we're required to provide to people when they ask for it, and when we're required to provide people with information. If we don't provide people with the correct information, the town is responsible for the legal fees that may be a result in someone taking this forward. So it's an issue. We actually have, I want to make sure all department heads are aware of the new law. We're having some training on it on December 20th with town council. She's coming here at no cost to the town to do it in the library at 6 o'clock right before your meeting. Elected and appointed officials are encouraged to attend, so just go. You don't have to sign up, and I'm mandating that all department heads go. Any questions on that one? Budgets were due into Munis yesterday. We're going through the process of putting that together. The capital budget was due in last Friday, as I mentioned. We will make sure that we cover all our bases in terms of recommendations as to what's a need versus a want. And I'll keep your board updated. I expect the budget message will be delivered on or about February 2nd. That's a Thursday. And we are going to go from there. Jarvis Farm, there's a joint meeting that's being held between your board, the Jarvis Farm Committee, the Sewer and Water Commission next week at 6:30 in the library on Tuesday night. We're just going to talk about the ongoing use of Adams Farm and the usage there in general. And Patrick's going to provide a report to the committee as to what he was able to get this summer in terms of programs down there. And I think it's really going to be an eye-opener for the board and the Jarvis Farm Committee, because the Recreation Committee did a great job down there this summer. I can't say enough about what they've done down there. Just one or two other issues. The fields, I mentioned last meeting, we are going forward with a field proposal for the property across from the prison that we recently purchased, 64 acres. We're in the process of developing a schematic design for some turf fields down there and some grass fields, and we'll likely be working with Walpole Youth Soccer, the baseball, youth lacrosse, as kind of a public-private partnership to see if we could fundraise for some fields down there and really do a lot of great work with some needed field space down there. Town Hall Reuse Committee, a couple of months ago, a month or so ago, your board talked about having a reuse committee. I know Selectman Stanton offered a name to me. Just keep in mind, we'd like to get that committee underway. I know that's an ongoing agenda item. If you have a person, I know Mark sent me a name today, let us know so we can organize that committee. And that is about it for me. And I know we talked about not having this discussion kick off until about 7:05, 7:15, so if we have no further business, Madam Chair, I'd recommend we take a 5-10 minute break so we can make sure that everybody can settle down in their seats. The IT director and I can make sure everything's working, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good. 5-minute break?
Sure.
All right.
So just give us a few minutes, folks. We're going to set up and make sure everything is good to go. Thank you.
Just to start, the acoustics in this room aren't that great, and the speaker system isn't that great. So if we could ask everyone to try to keep it quiet in between the speakers and while people are speaking, and take turns and be courteous. To start, I would like to thank the Mass DOT for accepting our invitation to present their commuter pilot service plan before the public hearing process. I would also like to thank our representatives that are here, Representative Dooley, John Rogers' office, and with that being said, I would like to start this presentation with Mr. Mike Berry coming up.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Nope.
Mike, you got to speak into the other microphone.
The one on the
Oh,
right.
I'm
For the
sorry.
for the in-house to hear you.
Hello?
Mike, we gotta buy our own speaker system.
How's that? Better? All right. Members of the board, Mr. Administrator, members of the public, good evening. My name is Mike Berry, and I serve as Legislative Director at the Massachusetts Department of Transportation and the MBTA. Before introducing my colleagues here this evening, I'd like to disclose that I am a Walpole resident of 23 years, but I'm also a proud alumni of various boards and committees in the town of Walpole, including the Board of Selectmen. With that being said, I'd like to introduce the members of the DOT team here with us this evening. First, Astrid Glynn, Administrator of the Rail and Transit Division. Next, we have Ryan Caholen, Chief Railroad Officer of the MBTA, and Jason Johnson from the MBTA Office of Community Affairs. The goal of tonight's presentation is to continue the conversation that began last week concerning proposed pilot commuter rail service to the town of Foxboro. We recognize that almost exactly 2 years ago, Mass DOT and the MBTA were here in Walpole, albeit under a different gubernatorial administration. Tonight's presentation reflects what I believe is a more measured and transparent process that aims to support regional economic growth without compromising public safety. We appreciate the time that the Town of Walpole and the Board of Selectmen has afforded to us this evening and look forward to a healthy discussion. And with that, I'd like to kick off our presentation. Historical context for the proposed pilot. An MOU was signed between Foxboro Realty Group and the MBTA on January 5th, 2015, which called for permanent passenger rail service to begin along the Framingham secondary line by December of 2016. The Baker administration took office on January 8th of 2015, and after significant public feedback and engagement with the Walpole legislative delegation, Mass DOT agreed to halt immediate implementation of permanent passenger service and instead evaluate the possibility of pilot service in the future. Since that time, Mass DOT has continued to perform routine maintenance work along the Framingham secondary line and has made this known on multiple occasions to both town officials and area legislators alike. What developments have occurred since that time? As most of you know from reading the paper, through a bipartisan legislative effort, the MBTA was placed under a Fiscal Management and Control Board, also known as an FMCB. As it relates to the proposed pilot, their authority and oversight includes reviewing of any proposals for system expansion and pilot service. Interest on the part of the town of Foxboro has continued in a pilot and in possible commuter rail service. A recent 9-0 vote by the Foxboro Economic Development Committee and a conditional 4-1 vote by the Foxboro Board of Selectmen was made last week. Due to continued demand from several communities for service expansion, the FMCB is considering a new policy to guide decision-making for proposed pilots. The draft policy currently before the board suggests 4 criteria to determine the success of a pilot. Those 4 being ridership, operational effectiveness, operational impacts, and capital costs. If approved by the FMCB, pilot service to Foxboro would be an early example of this new approach. Any agreement for a pilot service would include clearly defined metrics with which the MBTA could measure success. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Astrid Glynn, to continue the presentation.
Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. And thank you for coming here tonight to hear what we are thinking about. The proposed pilot program has several goals. Oh yes, one of these. Okay. They're very simple in many ways. First of all, we are hoping that this can show us a way to address some of the constraints and congestion on the region's highways and through actually the existing commuter rail system too. You don't need me to tell you that the highways between you and Boston are congested much more than you want. We are hoping that through this pilot, we can determine if the proposed service to Foxboro could provide a measure of relief, particularly given the new economic development that has been proposed for this area, particularly on Route 1. If we can have development that is more transit dependent, that is less auto dependent, that is something we are interested in. We also, frankly, see an opportunity to make use of infrastructure which we already own. As many of you know, the Framingham Secondary exists and was purchased about a year or so ago, actually almost 2 years ago now, by MassDOT. It is a freight line of long standing, carries CSX traffic regularly, but it could have another utility as a passenger corridor also. And frankly, we like to make sure that state-owned assets get used as much as it makes sense. We don't particularly like to carry underutilized assets if we can find a good way to make use of them. And finally, we want to test the goals of the Memorandum of Understanding that the prior administration entered into. The goals of which are of increased service to development in Foxboro, the goals of reduced traffic to that development, the goals of economic development with less impact on the roadways and on the environment. So what are we proposing, or what may we propose? Because I do want to emphasize, this is a proposal that was brought to us and that we are looking at. You are being briefed before the FMC board has been briefed. So what we are talking about is an approximately 11-month pilot program. It would probably commence in 2018. It would extend the existing Fairmont line service to Foxboro using the Framingham secondary line. The Fairmont line is an important line, but frankly, it's one of the lines that has some spare capacity on it. So again, if we can make use of that capacity, that's something that's interesting to us. It would provide three peak period trips and probably some midday service also. There would be no weekend service during the pilot. The Providence line, if any of you take that, service would remain unchanged. And as Ryan will talk in great detail, there would be significant safety measures implemented. The operational advantages of this pilot are several. First, as I mentioned, it would allow us to make maximum use of infrastructure that we already own, take care of, and have in place. Secondly, it would use infrastructure that is being used occasionally with game day service. There are special event trains there. This pilot would allow us to make a data-driven decision as to whether or not there is a demand for additional service. It would also mean that we have infrastructure improvements with a long-term benefit for freight service. The improvements to the line that would be part of the pilot would also benefit the freight carriers and the daily use that they make of the line. And finally, there would be an opportunity to increase parking. Parking is, as you know, a scarce commodity in many parts of this Commonwealth, particularly at transit stations. We have a constrained supply. This pilot would offer us a highly convenient location with up to 500 spaces with easy access to a state highway, and it would relieve parking congestion at neighboring stations, albeit perhaps I've heard that Walpole has parking, but you are fortunate in that regard. Many of your neighboring towns are very short on it. The Foxboro commuter rail service would, again, as I said, use the MBTA's existing Fairmont line, which is running with open seats. Open seats are not common on our commuter rail service these days. Our commuter rail service is getting increasingly popular. but lower ridership than expected means that there is capacity on the Fairmont line, and we would like to utilize that capacity and fill it up with more riders taking transit instead of driving. Now, as I said, safety is the MBTA's foremost concern, and it is true of this project as much as it is of any other. So we have brought with us tonight Ryan Cahalan, who is the Chief Railroad Officer of the MBTA and a very knowledgeable railroad operations person, who will explain to you in some detail the safety enhancements that we would see as part of the pilot project if it goes forward. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, members of the audience. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the safety enhancements that are planned for the Framingham Secondary in support of this proposed pilot program. So as Astrid alluded to, safe public transit is certainly the mission and the #1 goal of MBTA and MassDOT, and this project doesn't take any exception to that. MBTA and MassDOT maintain and are responsible for the majority of the railroad crossings throughout the Commonwealth. So with that, we really hold that as our #1 priority. Now, in Walpole, you have Summer Street Crossing, which the pictures up on the screen illustrate the current condition of that crossing. The last time there was any substantial work done on that crossing was in the mid-'80s by, at the time, Conrail. So what we're proposing as part of this program is the crossing at Summer Street will receive a full upgrade to the crossing surface. As you can see, the wood panels in the roadway have degraded over time, so that'll be a whole new crossing surface. We'll also add crossing gates, which today they do not exist. Right now there's just flashing lights and bells. With that, we'll also upgrade the flashing lights to a 12-inch LED, which is the industry standard today for railroad crossings. Electronic bells, I mentioned the gates, and also typically what we'll do in a situation like this is within the crossing footprint, we'll add sidewalks in our area of responsibility so that when we step away from the crossing, it's ready to accept whatever improvements the town would be interested in making from that point. And I mentioned sidewalks within the crossing panel. That also comes with gates and protection for those sidewalks as well. Now, this drawing's a little technical. The next picture will explain a little bit, but what we're looking at across the screen from your left to right is the Framingham Secondary. Up and down in the middle is Summer Street, the post office to your bottom left. And you'll see in the parking lot today where the post office is, we've marked out an area where we are proposing to add about 200 feet of guardrail to really separate that parking lot from the railroad right-of-way to keep everybody safe. I mentioned in the folks in the back of the room probably can't see it too well, but that also illustrates the crossing gates where they cross over the sidewalk to the right side and the crosswalk across Summer Street, which would continue any proposed sidewalk by the town. And this picture illustrates sort of what this crossing will look like at the end. This is taken off of another crossing on our network. But if you'll take note, the crossing mechanism to your right protects the roadway, and to the far left protects the sidewalk there. Some of the other safety improvements that we're looking at as part of this pilot at Walpole Station.
Excuse me, we're going to let him finish his presentation before we ask any questions.
Thank you. So at Walpole Station today, I'm sure most folks are familiar if you use Walpole Station. The photograph on the left illustrates the current condition at the station as you approach up the driveway towards the building. This program proposes that that crossing receive the same protection that I spoke about with regards to Summer Street. Flashing lights, gates, bells, to warn all traffic approaching the station. The photograph to the right shows the pedestrian crossing located at the far east end excuse me, of the platform, where today it's simply a sidewalk over the tracks. We're also proposing that that location be upgraded to what we implement across our system with current warning protection, warning lights and bells as well. So based on our preliminary review of the Framingham secondary and from a lot of internal knowledge about the line, we've already identified several areas along the line that we want to make sure that all the neighboring residents are kept safe. This map illustrates the section of the line between the Walpole station and the Route 1A overhead bridge, which is one of the areas where we're looking at installing anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 feet of fencing. And we're certainly willing to work with the town of Walpole and all those concerned to target any certain areas where that type of protection may be warranted. So our draft project schedule for this pilot during this winter of 2016, we're going to work hard on the long lead procurement items, pieces of track infrastructure, the crossing mechanisms that I spoke about, signal equipment, and of course the design, permitting, and the full bid package. And then once we get beyond the winter, hopefully early spring, we'll begin some construction with new ties, ballast, which is the stone along the right-of-way, surfacing to make the ride nice and smooth, grade crossing improvements that I spoke about already, and then that location just about 5 miles up from Mansfield, if you're following the railroad, there is one bridge that needs some work. And then by the winter of 2017, the rest of the design, permitting, and bid package will be out, where we will install new welded rail on this portion of the Framingham secondary. We'll complete the grade crossing work. We will also construct a passing siding at Foxboro today to facilitate CSX and their freight transportation over to Foxboro terminals. So what that involves is just about 4.3 miles of upgraded track. Now, we anticipate to operate passenger speeds an average of 40 miles an hour between Walpole and Foxboro.
What was that number? Can you say that again? What was the number?
40 miles an hour on average. So the maximum speed, right, that the 60 up on the screen. So when the Federal Railroad Administration provides a set of standards, the standards of the track that we will build meets FRA Class 3 standards, which allows for a maximum authorized speed of 60 miles an hour. That doesn't dictate the speed that we'll operate at. That's just what the federal guideline says that track will be constructed to for safety purposes. We intend to replace the current jointed rail that's along the Framingham secondary. That rail averages anywhere from 50 to 100 years old. The 39-foot long segments of rail that today contribute to a lot of the noise, the clickety-clack, if you think back to some movies. And so we're going to replace that with continuous welded rail, which is the industry standard. One long piece of rail, no more joint noise, and it's much less maintenance intensive. The installation of signals in Walpole and in Foxboro to accommodate the service to keep everybody safe. We also have the upgrades at Walpole interlocking, which is right at the station. That track that cuts through the parking lot is known as the Lewis's Y. We're going to power up that switch, which today all that is manual, so a train has to stop several times to get through. We're going to upgrade all that so the trains don't have to stop. There'll be a new interlocking just to the north of Foxboro Station, which will allow trains leaving Foxboro to enter into commuter rail territory. And as I mentioned, there'll be a new siding built at Foxboro Station, which will allow CSX to continue to service Foxboro terminals. I mentioned safety as well, and MassDOT, MBTA, we inspect and we're responsible for hundreds of grade crossings throughout the Commonwealth. And with that, we form tremendous partnerships with groups like Operation Lifesaver to educate the public in the communities that we operate. And we've also built our own in-house team comprised of railroad operations, MBTA Transit Police, and we work with all local law enforcement agencies to educate the public. We go out to schools, whatever the community requests. That's what we like to help out with. So with that, that concludes the presentation that we have for tonight. And I believe we can answer any questions that you folks may have.
I'll start with a few.
What are you going to do, Jim?
It's going to raise the screen.
Okay. So we're going to start with comments from the board.
And just so you know, despite we didn't see the screen, but we were following the slides up here, so. So I have several questions, some which were, I'll start with you since you're up here, and some which were brought up during your part of the presentation. You say it's 40 miles per hour on average. That means the vehicles are exceeding 40 miles an hour for at least part of this journey from Foxboro to Walpole, which is about 5.1 miles. Is that correct?
Approximately.
Yeah. So what speed are they going to get up to in that 5.1 miles?
So given the relatively short distance between Foxboro and Walpole, and bearing in mind that there are some engineering issues that would force us to operate approaching Walpole at a slower speed than 40 or 60, all that gets taken into consideration when we build the schedule. This is still so far out, we haven't built a schedule, but based on our operational experience with such a short length of track, the benefit by going an extra 5 or 10 miles an hour, it's really not noticeable once you get much beyond that 30, 40 mile an hour window.
So how long does it take one of those trains to get up to full speed?
If we left pulling out of Foxboro to get up to 40 miles an hour, would take probably a mile, mile and a half.
So you're going to hit full speed right about the Summer Street crossing?
Just in time to start to slow down.
Well, are you going to slow down at the Summer? What's the rules about slowing down at the Summer Street crossing?
So we haven't developed any special instructions regarding Summer Street, but I can tell you that the crossing protection that is put in place will operate based on the decided operating speed of that line.
So you could go, you can decide not to slow down at that crossing, is that what you're saying?
Well, we typically don't slow down at any specific crossing.
So you'll be at full speed at the crossing?
I would agree.
And you're saying that so if the average speed is 40 miles an hour, then you'll be at full speed at some speed higher than 40 miles an hour?
Not necessarily. We have not made a firm, solid determination on what the speeds will be.
Well, if your average speed is 40 miles an hour, and you're saying you're going to be at full speed prior to the crossing, how can you not be at some speed higher than 40 miles an hour?
I totally understand what you're saying with that. We're not far enough along in the planning to determine maximum operating speeds in this process. We're just not.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I think the maximum operating speed. It should be lower than your average right now. So did you go by the crossing today?
I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah, and you can almost see it from the end of our parking lot here at the Moyden School, right? And you know that it's traversed by a number of the school kids which do not get free busing within a mile of the school. You know that as well?
Yes.
Okay. And you also created a sidewalk only on one side of the street, according to your schematic. So you're going to ask these kids to cross the street, to cross the Summer Street station. Is that correct?
That design is what engineering best practices have determined.
Well, I don't like the best practices. I want better practices.
Understood.
And the next question is, it shows only 2 gates. Why aren't there 4 gates when your next slide shows that the optimal crossing has 4 gates and not only 2 gates?
The slide that shows the completed crossing actually just shows one vehicle gate. The other gate is the sidewalk gate, which is also shown on the schematic.
Right, but in one of your slides, you showed a train going through a crossing, and you said this is the modern optimal crossing. That crossing, the train was going through the intersections. I saw 2 gates on that side. So that intersection has 4 gates, not 2 gates.
The 2 gates that you saw in that picture, one gate was for the roadway and the other gate was for the sidewalk. That's up on the northern division of the community.
Oh, and that's a one-way?
Railroad Avenue in Everett.
No. Okay, so there would be only 2 gates? You're proposing only 2 gates. What's the benefit of a 4-gate crossing?
Well, that's typically that's not a standard railroad crossing design.
Are there some places where you have 4-gate crossings?
Some areas that have quiet zones do have 4-gate crossings, yes.
Are you proposing a 4-gate crossing or a 2-gate crossing at this location?
We're proposing one roadway gate on either side of the crossing for each lane, and also a gate for the sidewalk.
Now, on the Lewis Y, what are you proposing to protect that area?
That crossing right now is planned on being exactly like the Summer Street crossing, with the exception of course, the crosswalk infrastructure. But there'll be flashing lights, gates, and bells at the top of the driveway.
And what speed will you be going at that point?
Lewis's Y today is 10 miles an hour, and we don't see that changing.
So the curve forces you to stay at 10 miles an hour for that turn?
Correct.
Okay. And you realize, too, that people use the track as a crossing point from the parking lot on Spring Street to get to the main parking lot at Walpole?
I have seen that, yes.
Okay, and we're going to do something to protect that as well?
Well, part of that would be addressed with the fencing that we're talking about through that area.
You indicated that a bridge needs to be redone 5 miles up from the Mansfield station. Where is that bridge and what street does it cross?
It's a waterway that goes underneath the tracks. It's just, if you were standing on the Route 1 bridge, looking railroad south towards Mansfield, you could just see it as the track curves.
So it's between Foxboro and Walpole?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that wasn't clear to me. So what have you dealt with the challenges? What challenges is this going to create for the Fairmont line reliability? We've seen that Fairmont line has often been siphoned off. Equipment has been taken off that line. People were left stranded on that line. You're now bringing, how far away is Reedville to Walpole or Foxboro?
Reedville to Foxboro is probably just around 18 miles, track
So
miles.
you used to have trains at Reedville that couldn't cover the Fairmont line. You're now going to move them 15 miles in the wrong direction before you service the Reedville line?
So Reedville acts as one of our major facilities to service the entire commuter rail. The equipment that is laid up at Reedville does not just service the Fairmont line. But the idea is, as Astrid described, is to really capitalize on the infrastructure that we already have and the equipment that we already have that today doesn't operate at the maximum capacity.
So these trains, all of these trains out of Gillette are going to stop on the Fairmont, at the Fairmont stops? There's a question being posed. Are all of the trains that are coming out of Gillette going to stop at all of the Fairmont line stops?
We have not determined all the stops that those trains are going to make as of yet.
I've heard differing reports that these trains are not going to stop at any Fairmont lines. Is that a possibility? At any Fairmont line stops, that this train will bypass all of the Fairmont line stops. Is that a possibility?
Again, on the operational side, we haven't planned our schedule yet down to that level of
Okay. So when you said the words that this is an extension of the Fairmont line, you were saying that we were just going to use the Fairmont line. That's not in any way going to help the commuters in Boston along the Fairmont line. Is that correct?
I can't determine that just.
Right, it's actually going to move their equipment 15 miles away, further away at the beginning of the day and start it down that line. Or they're going to stand there and watch the Foxboro commuters speed by them, throw snow in their face as they stand there waiting for their train that may never come. Is that what's going to happen? You know, I don't live in Boston, but I saw that article about the Fairmont line, and it's terrible what the MBTA has done to those people. It's also a complete waste of money to spend $20 million into calling. What is this pilot program? I want to know tell me what the successful pilot program looks like today. What is this pilot program going to look like? What are you going to call success?
That is something that we will be determining. Thank you. That is something that we will be determining as over the next several weeks. As I mentioned, we are looking for a data-driven analysis coming out of this pilot. Actually, we would appreciate it if Walpole and other communities could help us identify key metrics that we should be looking at. Metrics such not just ridership, but also crossing safety, other factors that the communities deem important. As we said in the presentation, from our standpoint, the key areas to test are, first of all, does it affect operations? We believe that this would not affect operations adversely. We believe it could be operated quite successfully and provide additional opportunities to the Fairmont line riders, as well as the people who would be taking the train from Foxboro.
So you're saying it's add additional opportunity for the Fairmont line riders, but you're not committing today to even stop on the Fairmont line, are you?
Well, what we have said is that it is too early to say that there is a particular schedule, but it is certainly our intention to serve the Fairmont corridor.
So you did so the memorandum of agreement, was the town of Foxboro a signatory to that agreement?
I would have to defer on that to...
Well, I can tell you,
that
they
was
were
in the
not.
last administration, and I'm not that familiar with it.
They were not. MBTA, DOT, and a group called Foxboro Realty Associates were the only signatories to that agreement. Foxboro isn't a part of that. So, and as part of that, Foxboro Realty Associates spent some money, it looks significant because the report's about that thick, to do a study. And that study has come up with some it says that it lists the operating expenses, it lists how many people would be expected to be there, how many people would take the train. It talks about the revenue from the parking. And it says it's going to be at least a $2 million loss. Would you consider that a successful pilot, $2 million loss for 990 riders at maximum?
One of the other criteria that we use in determining whether or not a pilot is successful is, does the pilot show a return that is comparable to that of other examples of that mode? For instance, if it's a ferry proposal, does it promise to, and does it actually, give us a fare box recovery ratio comparable to the 69–70% that we get from other ferries that we run?
Okay, so
On
the option
commuter
C
rail-
in that report, how does that measure up?
On commuter rail, the percentage is lower than it is on ferries, but I believe it's higher than it is on buses. So we would be looking for a fare box recovery ratio comparable to the rest of the commuter rail system. If the pilot does not achieve that, we would have a hard time calling it successful.
And the feasibility study, does that indicate that it would meet that criteria?
I can't say what assumptions the feasibility study met. I can only tell you that we are looking at a profile that has some promise, and if it doesn't meet that criteria, then at the end of 11 months, it is going to have a hard time persuading us to go forward.
So you didn't even study the study in order to determine whether to go forward with this pilot?
There are many people in the building who have studied it.
Well, you don't have any information about it?
I have read the study way back when. I can't tell you that I have looked at it recently, for the very simple reason that we are looking at a pilot now that is conceived as a way to determine in reality if this is or is not a good idea.
And what, and so you're gonna spend how much on this experiment?
The budget is still being developed, but the dollars that we are going to be spending will also benefit the freight line. This is a MassDOT asset. We own the line. We are very concerned that it be in good condition. We are very concerned that it be a safe freight operation. So for that reason, we view our investment in the line for freight alone to be a worthwhile one.
Okay, so how much would it cost to upgrade just for the freight?
It's basically, there's really no, there's, I think, one passing siding may be the difference.
There's not a difference in the type of track and the type of building that needs to take place to?
You can, I mean, we like this quality.
Now, how fast are the freight trains going to go on this line?
Again, they tend to go slower. I would say that the freight might go, what would you say, maybe 30 miles an hour or 40?
Is that an average or is that a maximum?
Typically, when a rail line is meeting that Class 3 standard, passenger trains operating at 40 miles an hour, freight trains operate at 25 miles an hour.
Just one sec.
Yeah, we'll let you talk.
And what are the freight trains carrying?
They can carry anything.
Do we know what's on there now?
The freight lines are not required to advise us or any public agency what is in any particular train.
At any time?
At any time, as far as I know.
So even if it's hazardous, they don't have to inform?
As far as I know, that's true.
No, as long as they provide permits, they don't.
Okay. Well, thank you, and I may have more questions later.
So I have a few questions.
The ones in the slide.
You mentioned in the slides about economic development plans along Route 1. What are they?
I was referring to the economic development plans that have been adopted both by the town of Foxboro, both by the town of Foxboro and by the state's adoption of the economic priority zone for the area.
For Foxboro?
Along Route 1, yes.
Well, our board isn't aware of any
Right.
in Walpole.
I would assume it is in Foxboro.
Okay. And then, would it be changing our train times?
No, it would not.
It would not at all?
No.
So, I believe Foxboro has mentioned that they don't want the trains housed in Foxboro?
Foxboro's vote of the selectmen last week included a condition with respect to that. We have, excuse me, we told them that in the pilot, there would be no layover in Foxboro. We could not make the same representation with respect to permanent service.
So, 8 trips a day is really 16?
Three round trips in the morning, 3 in the morning, 3 in the evening, maybe a couple ish in the midday. So 2 times 12.
So whatever round trips is still, that's double, whatever?
Yes. So 3 and 3 times.
So you're going to do a pilot study that is actually double what you're telling us, because they're not going to be out in Foxboro. They're going to go back and forth through Walpole and all up and down. And they're going to go back and forth over the crossing.
It is, to the extent that trains deadhead, they do come through Walpole an extra time. But what tends to happen is the trains get recycled back and forth.
And so in the morning, before the first train leaves Foxborough, it's going to have to come through Walpole empty.
That is correct.
And when you do, if this pilot program goes forward, where would you be storing these trains?
In Reedville. During the pilot?
No, after
Oh,
the pilot.
afterwards, we would have to determine.
So what does that mean?
That means that at this point, we have not made a decision as to what would happen after the pilot with, and this is why we told the town of Foxborough, there might be layover in Foxborough.
Is there enough land to hold these trains in Foxborough?
The actual area required is not that large, because what you're really talking about generally is 1 or 2 trains stored there overnight. Virtually, with I think one exception, every one of our lines has some layover capacity at the end of it.
And is there any thought to potentially try to house them in Walpole?
No,
No thought, never.
no, not that I know.
And then you mentioned that potentially bringing 500 cars in and out of the stadium so that people could ride this train, right? Is what you said, 500
Well,
cars
500
potentially,
cars to the
with the
station,
potential
yes.
for more people to come to the stadium,
To the station.
to the station. So that means 500 cars coming on and off Route 1, as you said, great access on and off the highway. I mean, we already have so much traffic and issues because of the stadium, which we're all Patriots fans, we welcome that. We don't welcome necessarily the concerts. You know, when we're all trying to get home from work and everybody's heading to the stadium all at once, and then it turns our commuting time to be longer. So we've welcomed the commuter train, bringing people to concerts, bringing people to football games. But now you're telling us you want to bring 500 more cars just so that they can ride the train into our neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods are parking lots. The grade crossing. My kids ride their bikes all over South Walpole. Would you let your 5th grader ride back and forth over this? I mean, we don't have the buses, they don't get to ride the buses, living as close as we do. So they're walkers. They're going to be walking across this train line in 5th grade, 2nd grade? Do you think that that railing is just enough for your 2nd grader with their backpack to say, you know, to be paying enough attention? Because I've been perfectly safe for the last 14 years, allowing my kids to go back and forth there.
I cannot judge any particular instance of safety, and I would never presume to do so if you're involving a child. But I can say that a crossing with bells and whistles and gates tends to be safer than one without. And there are already trains using that line. So I would respectfully suggest that between Operation Lifesaver, which goes into the schools and teaches children how to be safe around trains on any line, and those additional safeguards, there is a greater measure of safety that is being included as part of this concept.
Okay, and then any plans to drive the trains through Foxborough?
No.
Like, you're going to stop at that station? Any plans to potentially go through Foxborough?
No.
Just through Walpole to get to Foxborough? And why was the choice made to go through Walpole? Why didn't you take the Mansfield line that heads into Boston? I mean, it's just a question. And then, are you purchasing any trains for this project, or are you using other trains?
We're using existing equipment.
Existing equipment. Is this the same existing equipment that is breaking down for everybody else that's commuting on all the other lines?
I wish I could tell you we had other existing equipment.
I mean, customer satisfaction should be important, and when I am in work in Boston, and many times a week, people in the same lines that they ride in are late because their trains have broken down. There's no heat on the train. I mean, I would think that you would want customer satisfaction on your existing service before you go adding more. That's how we handle our budget. And then I'm just wondering, you know, you're pushing forward so fast with this, but the answers that we're asking are, we don't have answers yet, we haven't thought of that. We don't have answers yet, we haven't thought of that. I mean, usually when you make a plan and you're going forward, you have those answers when you're presenting it to people. Is it that you don't have them or you're not sharing them?
We are presenting to you at a very early point in the decision-making process and in the design process. Much of this has not been designed. Much of it is the schedule, as Ryan mentioned, has not yet been established. So you are, by virtue of the fact that you are being given this information at an early stage, means that it is not as well developed as it would be if we waited until a later stage. But it will, as Ryan indicated, take approximately 2 years to build out what would be needed. So during those 2 years, we would certainly be developing more information, as well as working with the communities to make sure that things such as Operation Lifesaver are well imbued in the schools and in the neighborhoods.
And I hope during this process you reach out to the direct abutters and the neighbors to find out what is going on and what the requests are. I mean, before we could even support something like this, the safety issues haven't been addressed.
Addressing safety is a very important part of any pilot. And yes, we would want to meet with neighbors. We want to know where the cut-throughs are. We want to know where fences make a difference and where fences don't. All of those items.
Yep.
When you started, when you came up here, you said you were looking for us to develop the key metrics of what success looks like. What have other towns begun to tell you about key success factors?
This is the first time, really, that we are starting with this policy on pilots, where we are looking for a metric-driven, data-driven decision for how to judge a pilot successful. So I can't point you to other communities that have done that yet, but it is what we are going to be asking of all of the stakeholders in our pilots to help us develop. And again, it could be, safety, grade crossing incidents. It could be wait times. We're open to a variety of ways to look at how does the pilot measure up against the 4 criteria.
So if you were sitting up here and you were in a town that obviously gets almost nothing out of this, if anything at all, what would you say those success factors should be?
Well, I think one of the things you might want to look at is, as was mentioned, are there particular intersections that tend to collect those 500 cars? Are they in Walpole? And do they, how do they affect queuing time? I don't know the answer to that. I don't, it's what would have to be learned. What is, are there any grade crossing incidents, as I mentioned? Noise complaints. It is very common for communities to basically set up what amounts to, ways to let public agencies know when there is an impact. We don't expect impacts of, particular types, but if there are those impacts, we want to know about it.
Okay, thank you for that. Just for one point of clarification, and I know I got here late, you said the trains right now will be housed where? In Foxboro?
During the pilot, they would be housed in Meadville.
Okay, because in the 2010 study, we were one of the locations where the trains were going to be housed, and I just would like to understand if that's still in the master plan.
I haven't heard anything about housing trains in Walpole.
Okay, well, I can tell you, and we
Yeah.
can show you in the 2010 plan where we were the third location.
So maybe.
So, but the biggest issue I have, Selectman Salvatore and I had advanced to meet with you rather briefly, and I thought I was perfectly clear, and I probably wasn't, where I said, in a town like Foxboro that has great economic gain from doing this, a town for Walpole, we really are getting zero. And for me, security and safety are paramount. And when I still see trains going 40 miles an hour over crossings Summer Street right out here, and the only safety measure is a gate and some lights, that really doesn't cut it for me. So I wasn't here for the presentation, and I apologize for that, but I would like to go over one more time what safety measures, what enhanced safety measures can we expect if this pilot goes forward?
Ryan can go over them in detail. Basically, it is gates and bells, whistles at the automobile crossings.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He does this much better.
Okay, thank you. So, if you can, sir, if you can just start with speed of trains. And
Sure.
then go from there.
So.
Because everything falls from there, right?
Understood.
Frequency and then speed are the two biggest concerns.
Understood.
Right?
So typically at a crossing such as Summer Street,
Mm-hmm.
with the safety improvements that we've described, the gates, the sidewalk gates, the larger LED warning lights, and the electronic bells, we don't typically adjust our operating speeds over these crossings.
Right.
Okay? Like I said, the maximum authorized speed has yet to be determined because the planning for the operation is still in such its infancy. We don't have those answers yet.
So if we wanted the maximum operating speed to be 15 miles an hour, do we have a say in that?
That's what we have today out there for a
Right.
passenger train.
And that's what we'd like it to stay, right? 40 miles an hour is just, it's not even a starting point for us.
I would, and help me out because it's my own question, I guess, to you. What is the speed limit on Summer Street for vehicular traffic?
10 miles an hour.
10 for freight, 15 for passenger.
Yep.
That's how fast vehicles and go on Summer Street?
No, in cars?
That's what I'm asking.
Cars going over the railroad tracks?
Bill,
Correct.
help me here. Yeah, it's 20 miles an hour, max.
Okay.
Right. But if trains right now, the cargo trains are going how fast right now? 20 miles an hour, correct?
Freight trains do 10 miles an hour today,
Right.
passenger trains do 15.
Right.
Freight trains today go 10 miles an hour, passenger trains today go 15 miles per hour.
1.5, correct?
1.5.
So why would we, if we're looking at 6 round trips and a couple other ones thrown in there, I think was the answer, why would we feel good about anything faster than that?
Oh, with the crossing improvements that we've talked about, that typically justifies a safe operation at a speed greater than what it is today.
Right.
Because today, right now, it's just flashing lights and mechanical bells.
Okay. Now, other safety measures, that's it. It's just Summer Street, one gate, crossing lights, and that's the end of it? Or
Summer Street.
are there things like this enterprise paying for crossing guards? Is what education is going to go in for town members, especially here at the schools?
Sure.
I'm not really feeling enhanced safety here.
So what we do through Operation Lifesaver is what you just said. We go out to our communities, we target the schools, right? Of course, the children in the proximity that this crossing is to a school, that's probably our number one priority.
Right.
Okay? What we also do is we afford training and education to any public safety agency operating in a community that we serve, whether that's police, fire, EMS. We recently did a drill just about a year ago down at Foxboro, which encompassed, I know, members from the Walpole Public Safety Departments, Foxboro, and all those surrounding communities, where they get a chance to hands-on work on a train in a simulated situation to learn how to stay safe and how to take care of all those passengers on board the train or those nearby. All of that training and education is something that we can provide.
That protocol is more for trauma though, right?
Like for,
No, not necessarily. I mean,
No?
there's situations that could arise that
like
would
training
warrant.
for like a mass casualty event?
Not necessarily. It could be anything. It could be one person who is sick, even near the tracks. I mean, for a public safety agency, whether it's police or fire, if they're going to be on or near the tracks, we want them to be safe, whether or not a train is there or not.
Right. Okay.
That
Well,
is-
we can continue with this line of questioning, and I'm going to have my colleague, Selectman Gallivan, grab the mic in a minute, but I thought we were crystal clear in our original meeting that David and I had about a major uptick in safety, and quite frankly, I just don't see it in the slides here. And granted, you're talking about an 18 to 24-month period. I can tell you, during that time, this is a non-starter for me and a non-starter for us. And I would go back on your whiteboards and kind of try to figure out what enhanced safety really means, because I got to tell you, with trains going any faster than they're going right now, with the increased number of trains, it's just not going to work for us. Okay?
Mark? Thanks. So I think a lot of my questions have already been asked, but so for me it comes down to 3 points. The first one is, unlike Foxboro, which was asked to vote positively to sort of trigger this train to happen, Walpole has no vote. I just want everybody to understand that. At best, we can have asks, we can ask for mitigation for the neighbors, secure fencing, maybe some soundproofing, upgraded intersections, maybe crossing guards. So we can ask for those things, but I just want everybody to know here, we don't actually get a vote. And that's why, as Selectman Kraus was talking about, there's very few benefits for residents of Walpole. The train won't even stop at Walpole Station. So now, some of you who live in South Walpole may choose to go to Gillette, because that train will actually get you into Boston quicker than the train that passes through Walpole but won't actually stop. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. I think safety is a huge issue. I drive through that intersection pretty often in South Walpole, right down the street. And there's always kids around, walking around. Sometimes they're hanging out by the post office, literally right next to the tracks. So I'm very concerned about, how that gets dealt with. And I am concerned about train storage idling in Walpole. In the original 2010 study, which looks like that, on page 104, it talks about, under option C, the Baker Hughes property is option C for storing trains and idling trains. And I really don't think we want to get involved with, and we know Foxborough already asked not to have idling trains. The same should be true for Walpole. If they're going to run the train to Foxborough and give them the benefit, we don't really want to pick up all the hazards of an idling train. So I just want to say that. All the other points have been touched upon, and I'm really very interested to hear what people have to say. I'll hand this back to the chairman.
Do we want to do follow-up questions?
No, I'm good for now.
Okay. Okay, we are going to, oh, go ahead, Michael, please.
Let's make one point. To Selectman Gallivan's point, Selectman Gallivan, you referenced the fact that the pilot, as proposed, would not make any stops in Walpole, and that is correct. One of the things that we do also want to let the town of Walpole know is the reason for that. And the reason for that is those that take the commuter rail currently know that track comes in at a curve. Right now, if Walpole was interested in any type of service, there would need to be some significant capital upgrades, including, but not limited to, ADA accessibility, to have a mini-high platform or something of that nature that would allow those that need access to be able to board that train. So it's important to make that distinction. It doesn't mean that were this pilot to first be approved, then be extended into permanent service. It's not to completely discount the possibility that Walpole would not receive increased service, but at this time, there actually isn't the physical capability to allow people to board safely and exit safely off that train. So,
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you pointing that out. And in the 2010 study, there was a section that talked about a significant investment that would be required by the MBTA to upgrade the station to be able to handle both of those tracks. So it was an option in there. I don't remember the exact number, but let's say it was $60 million worth of investment would be needed, with the Walpole station, with upgraded tracking and all those kind of things. And I'm sure there were other things involved. So, but as the plan stands right now, and as the plan that we talked about 2 years ago in the same room, both of those plans, the current plan and the 2-year-old plan, doesn't really provide a benefit to Walpole. It would be different if Walpole commuters at least had the chance to get on a train and get the benefit of a sped up trip into Boston. But at this point, we don't really get any of the benefits. We just sort of get the trains crossing through. So thank you, Mike.
I'm sorry, I do want one follow-up, if I may. So I've heard differing reports. The most popular train stop on the south side is the Back Bay stop, is that correct? And will this train be stopping at Back Bay?
Operating on the Fairmont line, this service would not stop at Back Bay. Back Bay Station is not on the Fairmont line.
Bill, hold on one sec, I'll get you.
We have not determined what stations the service would stop at yet. I can't
So
speak
like Ruggles?
to studies.
Ruggles and downtown.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we go to audience questions, residents' questions, I would like to ask Representative Dooley to come up and...
Just one question, and then I'll follow it up with a comment. My first question is, why going through Walpole and not going through Foxboro? If this is about economic development, and everyone's talking about, oh, it's about economic development, it makes a lot more sense to bring it from the Mansfield station. This is 4.5 miles, Mansfield Station's 5 miles, where you're able to connect to TF Green Airport in Rhode Island, you're able to connect to the Amtrak service up and down the East Coast, and linking into Boston. Whereas this service only connects back into Boston. So if we're really trying to expand the economic development of this region, doesn't it make more sense? And I wanted to know why. I mean, I know why the people of Foxboro want it coming this way, because they get all the benefit and we get all the headaches. But why has that not been considered?
Well, I will again turn this over to Ryan, but I think part of the reason, or the major reason, is that this is a route that is less congested, and we are trying, as we said, to make maximum use of infrastructure that we own that is not congested. We're trying to spread out demand, and Ryan can talk about the alternative route. But this is a relatively clear route and one that we own and one that has untapped capacity.
Thank you. So as Astrid mentioned, the route that you mentioned up from Mansfield is of course on the Northeast Corridor, which sees service from Providence, southern part of Rhode Island, the Stoughton line, and 40 Amtrak trains a day. So we targeted the Fairmont line for those reasons of the infrastructure is already there and it's underutilized. So there's capacity to run this service via that route, via the Franklin line to the Fairmont line. From a track geometry standpoint, if you're familiar with Mansfield, the track only feeds onto this line that comes to Foxboro if you're coming from Providence. And the way the area is laid out, there's not a lot of room to work in if we wanted to come in via a different route. The way the track is aligned today, it strictly allows service from Providence up to Foxboro, and then coming back up through to Walpole and then into Boston, that direction.
Representative.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm not going to get into this tit for tat in this asking questions back and forth because, you know, I'm strongly opposed to this. Many of my colleagues are strongly opposed to this. From a financial standpoint, we don't need to be spending $30 or $40 million. We just had to cut $98 million earlier today at 5 o'clock. The governor cut because we're under, you know, we're over budget on all these things. Yet we seem to have plenty of money to give Bob Kraft a private train line. But But the reality is, I despise the fact that they're calling this a pilot program. You're not spending $30 or $40 million on a pilot program. This has been in the works from 2010. The Kraft Group hired Myrick O'Connell, who did this phenomenal report and spent, you know, tons of money on this. None of us found out about this until 2014 when they were buying the CSX lines. They bought the CSX lines for $24 million, and they were so poorly situated that we now have to spend millions of dollars to repair them. So it just doesn't make any sense. This has been a backroom deal from the beginning. This has been being shoved down our throat from the beginning. And it bothers me that, you know, she glanced at the report a few years ago and not recently. The Kraft Group's own report, their own report. So that's going to be about as good as it gets. Has 100 to 200 new riders. The rest is going to be bastardized from neighboring towns riding this train, and it's going to operate at a loss of millions of dollars to the taxpayers. Unless, of course, Bob Kraft utilizes this for a private boondoggle in the back of his parking lot. I mean, I don't blame Mr. Kraft and the Kraft Group. It's brilliant. Get the state to pay for a private train station, and I can build some luxury condos with express train service to Boston and sell them for $1 million a piece, or have a corporate headquarters going back and forth to your other corporate headquarters in Boston. Brilliant. And put it on the taxpayer's dime. Now, granted, he's willing to kick in a whole $200,000, but it is mind-boggling that this is being shoved down our throat. This is not good for the economy. This is not good for this region. The town of Foxboro is serviced by 4 stations that are abutting to them. Everyone in Foxboro within 2 miles from their house can get to a station on 2 different lines. They can drive to Mansfield. They have their own private parking lot with private bus service going back and forth to Mansfield that nobody uses. And Mansfield comes in 20 minutes to 30 minutes faster than Walpole. This doesn't make any sense. And as far as capacity on the line, it's amazing because all of my colleagues have sat down with Keolis repeatedly asking for an express train to handle Franklin, Norfolk, and Walpole into Boston, and repeatedly we are told, sorry, there's no capacity on this line whatsoever. We don't have room in the queue. If we had an express line, we couldn't get it in because we'd be too jammed up, and we'd get it somewhere, and then it would have to stop and wait. And now all of a sudden, 3 days ago, just so you know, it was eight trains a day. Now it seems to be 18, 3 round trips in the morning, 3 round trips in the evening, and say 3 during the middle of the day, times 2, 18 trips going through our town. And those 18 trains that are on these broken down trains, 50 of our trains are over 25 years old on our commuter rail. So any of them break down south of Dedham, it's single track. So that delays everything going down to Walpole, down to Norfolk, down to Franklin, and over to Gillette. So we have that many more problems that are inherent in this petition. The reason that we need to be investing in our trains, and if you want more people to ride your trains, is you have them on time and you have them be reliable. People need to get to work on time, and people are sick. People don't want to hear the excuse, oh, my train ran late for the 3rd time this week, or I'm picking my kid up from daycare, and it's $10 a minute for every minute I'm late picking my kid up. And 3 times this week it's been late because there's leaves on the tracks or whatever other excuse, or the train broke down, or there's single line track. There's so many other things that we should be spending our money on before we worry about wasting money for one personal private investor. If he wants to do it, he should invest it himself. Thank you.
One other comment I forgot to mention is a concern that, other than safety, our economic development, our downtown Walpole, downtown Sharon, downtown Norfolk, that if there's going to be an express train that leaves from Foxboro, from Gillette, the people that park in downtown Walpole, downtown Norfolk, and downtown Sharon, those people use those businesses. Those people go shopping there after work, they use the pharmacy there, they use the dry cleaner there, they meet for dinner after there. You know, we spend a lot of time promoting our downtown and supporting our downtown, but that's going to be a huge draw of people that will be looking for a quicker commute, that may decide to just drive, you know, the extra 10 minutes over to Foxboro so that they can get a quicker ride to and from Boston. But the snowball effect is going to be our downtowns that we want to support. And I see a huge problem with that.
Thank you. Please. Hello, I'm Mark Hogan from Representative Kafka's office. I want to thank all the constituents that have reached out to us this week about this. I just wanted to run down a few of the points that I got from tonight's presentation. I've actually been following this for the representative since the Myrick O'Connell study became public many years ago. Some things I've noticed is there was references a lot about what hasn't been determined yet, with the planning and things like that haven't been established. But we've already seen the master plan for putting in the fully gated crossing, the lights, the sidewalks, the guardrails, the new tracks, the ballasts, and the ties, which implies to me that if you're going to put all that money into this, then you've kind of already planned to do this, and the word pilot program is a little disingenuous. The crossing protections that were referenced to be put in at Walpole Station, that is nice and all, but we should probably have those anyway, regardless of this. When it comes to safety, I know we referenced the safety gates, which would of course be nice, but currently we have very little trains running over that track, and it's actually probably going to be more than the 18 that Representative Dooley pointed out, because one of the things you pointed out was that this would be a benefit to the freight line. Well, the only way it's a benefit to the freight line is if more freight trains use it. So that means even more trains should be going on that track. The 40 miles per hour, which seemed like the average, means that sometimes it'll go above that, but even if it was going just 40 miles per hour, that's high above the 15 miles per hour that the fastest train uses. So I don't quite see where the safety comes in there. I think I'm safer if I'm a kid crossing the street when there's only one train a day going over, maybe two, than with 18 different trains that are going much faster, regardless of a gate. And then the other thing I noticed was when we were talking about benefits, there was a point where it was referenced that the clickety-clack of the rail would be less annoying with the new rail, but I think based on what the residents have told us, the train that goes by clickety-clacking once a day is probably going to be less annoying than 18 trains flying by. I grew up in Walpole. I don't live here now, I'll admit that. I moved out of town, but I grew up in Walpole, not right next to the track, but across the street from the houses next to the track, and I heard every single one of those trains. So I'm pretty sure if you're right next to it, you're going to hear all those trains at a much higher rate than just the one that clacks down there now. And finally, the benefits for the project that seemed to be laid out in the presentation were that the Providence line would remain unchanged, which as a Providence line commuter I do appreciate, but the benefits to the development in Foxboro and added parking, you also referenced that Walpole actually doesn't have that problem. So that's also not a benefit to the town of Walpole. Essentially, all this brings to the town of Walpole is an increased lack of safety, and then on top of that, as pointed out by the representative as well, these trains run on a single track to get between Foxboro and Boston. So you have just added 18 or more chances for a train to break down on that single track that already has breakdowns on it a fair enough amount of times. And I just, on behalf of the representative, I don't see how this benefits Walpole in the least. And again, I do think it's disingenuous that we're calling this a pilot program, because it seems like we're sinking the money into something that there's no point in sinking the money in if we're not going to do. The representative has been railing against, sorry, that was not an intended pun, against this adding service when we currently need to fix the system that we currently have. We've been against the South Coast Rail project for quite some time, and yes, this project's not going to cost as much as that, but it really doesn't seem like it provides that much of a benefit towards what it's going to do to the people of Walpole. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hogan.
So we're going to open this up now to the audience. I would only ask that we try not to be duplicative in the questions being asked. I got you. And keep your questions as brief as you may, and we'll try to get as many people who want to ask questions in. We're going to begin this night with former Selectman Cliff Snuffer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago, if you all remember, we were in the same room and we were having the same discussion. Do you recall what happened about a day before we found out about the entire original program? They spent $25 million and bought the Framingham extension. Do you also remember that there was an utter lack of transparency in giving us any kind of information, any kind of heads up, any kind of data that would give us an opportunity as citizens to be able to have a conversation intelligently and argue the benefits or lack thereof? At that time, my good friend Representative Dooley, Representative Rogers, Representative Kafka, Representative McMurtry, and Senator Timilty, and when I was a member of this austere body, we all got together and in frank English, we gave them hell. The reality is that this is a done deed. And Walpole is a very clear English-speaking population. And I will say it for you. We are getting screwed. Let me just say the following. The people from DOT are on record as saying that if Foxboro said no, that they would go away. May I ask you again, is that the truth? If Foxboro said no, you would go away. Then let me ask you this question, my good friend Mr. Berry, or whomever. Are we not the more aggrieved of the two towns? Did you ever consider asking us for that same opportunity to say yes or no?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
She's got to go to the microphone, please.
If you can, please go to the microphone.
And in order to assist, if you never thought of asking Walpole for the right to say yes or no, my follow-up question is a very simple one. Why not?
This proposal is a proposal that was brought to us from people in Foxboro. We did not go. We did not go to Foxboro. We developed this proposal as a result of the MOU that was developed between people in Foxboro, some corporate, some non-corporate, and the prior administration. So we are not in the habit of asking every community that our service goes through whether or not that, to take a vote on the proposed service. This proposal for a pilot came to us, and we have worked on it to respond to a legitimate question about whether there could be more transit-dependent development than there would be if this service did not exist.
The answer, I think, is fairly obvious, and that answer is that they didn't dare come to the town of Walpole. The other part is, if you remember the slide, it was a beautiful slide showing very neat and trim rail beds. I want to show you what that rail bed has looked like now for weeks. They have been staging the repair product on those tracks for weeks. Months. Thank you. Thank you. For 40 years, I abutted the train tracks. And for 40 years, I can tell you that the reality is that I lost certain of my mother's knickknacks that fell off the shelf because of the vibrations, and those were at 10 to 14 miles per hour. At 60 miles per hour, the town of Walpole and the DOT are going to have to hire seismic engineers from Mount Vesuvius to figure out the damage that could take place for the hundreds of houses. I'm going to make a suggestion to you and to the board, and that suggestion is as follows. If we take a look at the aggrieved parties, Walpole clearly wins that battle, unfortunately. We are the most aggrieved between Walpole and the town of Foxboro. Therefore, I'm going to jump to this wild conclusion that we are as good as the town of Foxboro, because up on the stage and in the print, it showed the Foxboro Rail Program presentation to the town of Walpole. So I'm going to, and I see one of the selectmen from Foxboro here, and Ginny, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the fight that you gave in the town of So I will say the following. I will say that seeing that we are the same, or actually the more aggrieved of the two towns, I'm going to reflect on the same conditions that the Foxboro Board of Selectmen offered to the DOT. Condition A, no overnight layover in Foxboro. The DOT folks could not answer if and where there would be a permanent layover. They're not answering it tonight, and quite frankly, if Foxboro had said no, this program was going to go on anyway. Now, my opinion is, seeing that we are co-equals, that no layover will be in Walpole ever. Condition B, local assessment. Foxboro wants no surcharges or fees. Well, guess what? In 2017, the town of Walpole paid $536,747. I now want to be equal. I want it to go away. The other part is to figure out that they wanted a seat on the so-called advisory board. Well, I don't think we need a seat on the advisory board. I think we have common opinion on our side. But I'll take it. The other is no at-grade crossing in Foxboro. Seems to me that this is a de facto admission by the Board of Selectmen that such crossings are not only troublesome, but also considered to be extremely dangerous by the Foxboro Selectmen. I would add that in Walpole, there should be no at-grade crossing within 1,000 feet of a school, and as well as 100 feet from a post office or 100 feet from a fire station. I'm going to share something with you. That, by the way, politically is called the language of preciseness. We are very precise with our language. This board, these fine people, and my good friend Selectman Gallivan said, there's not much we can do in terms of a vote. I'm going to make a recommendation tonight, and I hope you will all support me in encouraging this board to do the following. I will ask this Board of Selectmen to create a motion and formally vote against this project for the record. I will ask this Board of Selectmen to seek an injunction against this project in court and halt this abomination for the protection of our citizens and their rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stuffer. Before I go to Bill Hamilton, I do want to recognize, and she asked to speak, Foxboro Selectman Virginia Coppola. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I did not have an intention of speaking tonight. I just came here to see what the presentation was going to be. However, there are two things I take exception with. First of all, in 2014, I was on the Board of Selectmen, and this proposal was presented to us at a Selectmen's meeting. The proposal came from an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. It was not with the town of Foxboro. It was with Foxboro Realty Corporation. When we first heard the proposal, we were shocked. We had no idea. We had a new town manager who was told that this was going to happen. And he said, wait a minute, I have to go back and talk to my Board of Selectmen. That's the only reason we had a presentation at the high school. We had questions. We had a lot of questions, and we didn't get answers. So it was kind of dropped. All of a sudden, this came up, 2 weeks ago. And it was presented to us at a Selectmen's meeting, not on the agenda. It was presented as part of our town manager's report. And he kind of asked for the blessing of the Selectmen. I had questions. Another one of our Selectmen had questions. Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? First of all, we couldn't vote on it because it wasn't on the agenda. And it was because of our insistence that it be put on the agenda for the next meeting, which was 2 weeks later, which was last Tuesday. They made the presentation. You actually had a more detailed presentation tonight than we did. And I know some of the Walpole people were there. The main concern of the Selectmen, and believe me, the number one concern for me was the proposal about a layover of the locomotive, a layover overnight, running overnight in the town of Foxboro. And that was the biggest concern to me. So we were asked, the board was, and I also believe that this pilot program, if you don't run the program exactly as it's going to be, if you don't have the answers to people's questions, then it's not a pilot program. It's let's throw something and see what sticks and see if we can get it through. Because if we put all the money in to the rails and everything, how can you say, no, we can't continue? The money's already been spent. And we know how fiscally responsible the MBTA and Mass DOT is. That's being facetious. So when the Selectmen were asked to vote, we said, okay, but we're going to have conditions. And the number one condition, and I'll read the letter that was sent to Mass DOT. Condition number one, that there would be no action taken by the MBTA to provide permanent overnight storage of trains in Foxboro. To tell you the truth, if I had written that, it would have been a little different. I would have said no overnight layovers in the town of Foxboro ever. And Miss Lynn, I believe her name is, tonight said, okay, they guaranteed that there would be no overnight storage during the pilot program in Foxboro. But because of the conditions we sent on our letter of support, if they plan on doing a layover overnight on the permanent program, then that negates our letter of support. Because we don't want a layover in the town of Foxboro, as you don't want layover in the town of Walpole. So that, when I heard that the condition was for the pilot program, but we weren't promised in the permanent program, that's when I got a little upset, and I decided I am going to speak. So I want to thank you very much for having this meeting. You asked very good questions. Your Board of Selectmen asked excellent questions.
Thank you very much.
And I know I'm probably not going to be too popular with my fellow selectmen, but you know what? Sometimes you have to be able to sleep at night, and sometimes you have to make decisions for the right reasons. And you really have to question whether this decision that they're asking, they're asking for is the right decision. Is this the right project for this area? And I can tell you, I don't think it is. So, thank you very much.
Thank you again, Ms. Selectwoman Capola. I spoke to her today, and I promised. I said I won't say anything that we talked about to anybody, but I'm going to tell you one thing she said to me. She said, I couldn't sleep thinking about the people of Walpole after that decision that Foxboro made. I appreciate that.
Before we take any other comments which we want to hear, I did want to just make a motion that this board is not endorsing the proposal that was presented tonight. We automatically feel that there was not enough information to answer questions for anything. I know that, as Mr. Snuffer said, it's not that we are being asked to vote either, but this is a motion of endorsement or not endorsement, and the plan that we were presented with tonight does not, a motion to not support.
I'll second that. You want a second?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion?
I just want an opportunity at some point to make a final statement, but did you want to do that?
No.
Should I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other on this alone? Or
Nope.
no? All in favor?
Aye.
400. Now, regarding Mr. Snuffer, or former Selectman Snuffer's request for an injunction, we have texted legal counsel. They're taking a look at that, and we will get back to you probably at our next meeting. So thank you on that.
Former Selectman Bill Hamilton.
Thank you. And thank you for the vote. I have a quick question here. Does the fact that this is called a pilot program mean that you are exempt from meeting the highest and best safety standards at the Summer Street crossing?
Yeah, please, up to the...
So, as we describe the improvements that are planned for Summer Street Crossing, they meet all of the federal regulation for any rail service, whether it's exclusively freight, passenger, pilot program, permanent service. Although that crossing will be built to today's federally required standard for safety.
Oh, okay. Now, are you aware that we had 2 gates there and they had to be taken down because of gridlock caused by false alarms?
I'm not aware of gates on the Framingham Secondary at Summer Street.
They were there. They were there. They would go down because vandals would set them off, and we had to back up school buses because they couldn't go across on a red light and a gate down. So that's a big problem. Now, we have a freight line going at 10 miles an hour.
Bill, can you talk into the microphone?
Going at 10 miles an hour that has collided 6 times with vehicles in that Summer Street crossing. Going at 10 miles an hour, that freight train could not stop to avoid a collision. And now we're talking about going, could be possibly 60 miles an hour, which is 88 feet a second. That's 1,760 feet in 20 seconds, 40 feet less than 6 football fields. And you're going to have kids, and you're going to have vehicles crossing there, and if those gates don't go down fast enough and a car gets stuck there, the gates that you're talking about putting in, are they going to have a radar-type possibility of warning the engineer ahead of time that there's a gridlock at the intersection?
So as far as approach timing and the warning time?
No, no. Now, if you put in 4 gates with radar, it will tell the engineer that when the gates go down, that that section is clear, so he can pass through between the gates. If you don't have the radar to look in there, then the engineer has to depend on line of sight, which is very small there, and he will collide with the vehicles. If there's a vehicle stuck there, there will be no signal telling him you've got congestion in your path. But you can do that with the 4 gates. I know that if you put in 4 gates with radar, the radar looks down the track, sees the speed of the train, puts the gates down, what's it, 45 seconds or 50 seconds before? 20, puts it down 20 seconds before. So now the vehicle will approach, and it will have a clear path because the radar also checks between the gates, so it knows that there's no obstruction. Without that radar, and with only 2 gates, you're not guaranteed of the engine being able to stop, especially if it's going at 40 to 60 miles an hour. Why not put in 4 gates? With the technology exists, radar exists. Now, I know you're going to weld the tracks, and I looked into it. Welding the tracks will not stop vandals from putting a connection across the tracks and activating a false alarm. And we lived through a false alarm for a few years, and they ended up taking down the gates. But that was only a freight line, and you didn't require them for passenger service. You only require them for passenger service. Now, we're running passenger trains under a pilot program for the stadium for Patriots trains, and we have no gates. And I believe that you required gates for passenger trains.
Thank you, Bill. Let him answer that, and then I got to get another question in here. Thank you.
So the final design for Summer Street is not set in stone. That's
correct.
Kind of why we're here to feel where we're at today. So I would say that nothing is off the table as far as what gets incorporated into the final design for Summer Street. And as far as any regulation requiring gates for passenger versus freight, there is nothing in the Code of Federal Regulations that really delineates that, but it's our standard practice on a rail line that sees regular passenger service to include gates.
Right. I would ask you, thank you for the response. I would ask you to spend some time with Bill Hamilton, who has lived through this for decades.
Sure.
And he's
Absolutely.
a very valuable resource to you.
We'll talk.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you.
Planning Board Member John Murtaugh.
Good evening,
Good to
Mr.
see you, my
Chairman
friend.
and members of the board. The transit system is broken, and badly broken. We had the runaway train with the throttle tied back. If that had succeeded in getting into the station, how many people would it have killed? We had the smoke-filled train where the locking mechanism wouldn't work, so people had to kick out the windows to get some elderly folk out because the carriage is filled up full of smoke, carbon monoxide.
Thanks, that's what
My advice to you guys tonight, you're wasting your money out here, 30, 40 million. Fix your broken system before it kills somebody. You know, my son was one of your best commuters. And last year, he had to give it up. He said, Dad, I want a new car. He said, I'm going to lose my job. These trains are never on time. So what could I do when I buy him a new car? So now he commutes up to the city in his car. A disgrace. Fix your system. It's a holy disgrace. Go up to Canada. Look at their system. Myself and my wife was up there 2 years ago, minus 20 degrees. Not a problem. It's a broken system. Fix your system before you move on. And, you know, we have these political appointments, appointment by Deval and continued by our governor. Let me tell you something. Some of these guys wouldn't hold down a job flipping hamburgers at McDonald's. Thank you. This is a broken system, and this is a backroom deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. We'll go next to Tim Guyette, who is also a member of the FinCom.
Hi, thank you. Now, 2 years ago when we were here, we talked about the cost of this, and you mentioned tonight, I know that it was $25 million spent to buy the line, and then there were improvements, there's going to be improvements to the line. What you showed was between Foxboro and Walpole. But as I recall, a couple years ago, because we're going from freight trains to commuter trains, it actually needed improvement along the whole stretch of the line. So what is the estimated cost of prepping the entire line for this service? You guys should be sitting here.
As I indicated,
If you could use the microphone, I'm sorry.
as I indicated, the budget is still being.
If you could use the microphone.
Yes, the budget is still being developed, but we have a preliminary estimate of work in the Foxboro-Walpole stretch, depending on a variety of design issues, probably somewhere in the 15 to 20, $21 million range, again, depending. The design is still being developed, so to pick any number at this point would be premature and not accurate.
Before the rest of I just want to kind of focus them towards.
But as I said, those improvements, with the exception of one siding, would be beneficial for the freight service, not just for the pilot service.
Let them hear all the safety
That is
issues. Tell me where the kids are
exclusive
crossing
of
the
the
tracks.
station,
Tell me where.
which
who's
is not
sneaking over
included
Cumberland Farms.
because it is not part of the proposed
And
pilot.
if they're not taking notes.
Okay, so I guess my point is, so that's about 1/3 of the line, if I remember the presentation. I think the line's about 15 miles long. We're talking 15 to 20 million, so what is that, 45 to 60 million dollars. Now, as a private sector employee, let me play this back to you for a second. I'm gonna go to my boss tomorrow, and I'm gonna say, I got this great idea. Let's spend $60 million on a project that I know will lose money, and the way we'll make that up is we'll charge our existing customers more to pay for it. I would be fired before I got the last sentence out of my mouth. I mean, this is the most illogical thing I have ever heard. You know, the other question I asked 2 years ago was, what is, as a comparison, I wanted to know what the Franklin line returned in terms of net revenue. I was told, well, the Franklin line loses money, as does every other line. So we know it's going to lose money. So one of your studies for the pilot is operational cost effectiveness. How much does this line have to lose to be considered operationally cost effective? Ridiculous.
If you can do that,
I'm just going to say one. So I went through this pile of papers. There are a million reasons why this is not a good idea. There's only one person and one entity that it's a good idea for. It's Foxboro Realty Associates. I think we've got there. We know that. What I'm concerned about now as a selectman, I sort of feel like I have two hats. One is a selectman worrying about the safety of our town, and if this does happen, that we need to be concerned about how it does. If you know, the powers that be, the billionaires that have a vested interest in this get their way, then we're going to be stuck with this line. So they're here now, and I would like to try and focus our attention now to what are the safety issues, and I'm going to start with one. On Oak Street, when the kids come down Oak Street from the high school, they either go up Oriole Lane or they cross that little street near Mr. Snuffer's house.
Audubon.
Well, there's another street there, and they go up to Cumberland Farms. I want to make sure there's a protection there. So come up.
Can you come, I want to get this right and make sure it's on the record, so if you, please. And then Michelle, we'll go right to you. I'm sorry about that.
So I'm Kevin McDonald. I live on 19 Audubon Drive. I'm direct abutter to the rails, right? Right behind my backyard, there's a hill. The other side of that backyard is the rail line, okay? In terms of that, I think someone was talking earlier, it might have been Cliff or somebody, was talking earlier about the vibration, the rattling. The freight trains rattle my house every time they go by, right? And they're going by at 15 miles an hour, right? 10, right? So you can improve your rails, you know, you can do whatever you want, but if they're going through there at 35 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, trust me, there's going to be vibration, okay? The kids also, and I think this is the point, the kids cut through to go back to Cumberland Farms, right? So this is a shortcut for the kids to go the Audubon Drive area, kids from Oak Street and South Street, Audubon Drive, right? There are 62 homes in the Audubon Drive area right there, not including Oak Street, South Street, etc. They cut over that hill, right, to go into Cumberland Farms, right across the train. Okay, I have a hill. There are some people in my neighborhood that don't even have a hill, right? There's some trees and the rails, right? And for you to think that, oh, hey guys, don't worry about this. Foxboro's going to get some train service, and you guys are going to have 18 trains going through a day at an average of 40 miles an hour, when the kids are cutting across these rails going over to Route 1, right? They're going over to Cumbies, they're going over to Leo's, they're going over to Rico's, right? And this is what they do all the time, let alone the kids are riding up and down the hills on motorcycles, but we'll let that go for the moment. You have to understand, there is nothing that prevents these kids from going over there, and the noise, and the vibration that we currently live with, and then you're proposing, hey, 18 to 20, trips a day, trains going through at 40 miles an hour, so that Foxboro, can have maybe 100 people get rides into the city of Boston for what you're paying. Please, give everybody livery service directly to Boston. Save money. I'm telling you, find out who they are, write them a check, pick them up in the morning.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michelle Kelly, please, lifelong resident of Walpole.
Yeah, thank you. Michelle Kelly, 8 Garfield Street. Not to be redundant, because you guys have really already checked off half of my boxes that I came with tonight. But 2 things that also did come from that 2010 initial feasibility study report. So we're talking 2010, 2 years before we came to the table, 2 years ago and 2 days at our last meeting here, where we actually had a vote. On page 18, number 6, it provided us location for storing rolling stock. And in order, this feasibility study, that in order for this to actually work and provide full-time service, it will be required to offer a layover somewhere. And then if you go down to item 9 on that same page, number 18, passenger service on the existing Framingham Secondary, where it says to make full-time service convenient for Foxboro passengers and for any service option that would require, this would require the existing speed limit so that the trains could operate up to 60 miles per hour, which you've already said, and we keep going back to 40. Consistently 2 years ago, all we said was 40. With the report that we had from 2 years prior to that said 60, and when we brought it up, it kept being brushed under the rug. Again, transparency here. And I thank you for just having me up here, and thank you for all the great questions and all you do for our town.
Thank you.
Ryan Norton.
Yeah, hold on one second. If we can have a line of people who want to speak after this gentleman form, unfortunately, we can only go to about 9:35 this evening, and then the school shuts down, so I want to try to get as many people in as possible. So Brian, please, your name and your address. Thank you.
Ryan Norton, legally 901 Old Post Road, but I
That's
really
good
left
enough.
out town.
Thank you.
So back in April, the MBTA Fiscal Control Board met, and they were discussing two pilot programs. One being this one, the other one being extending the Millboro line to Buzzards Bay. Foxboro was chosen, but Buzzards Bay was not. 2 months earlier, the town of Bourne had just voted to be added to the MBTA district so that they could get service. Now, lately, they're saying, well, maybe we could get into the South Coast Rail project if and when that ever happens. And they've, and so they're just kind of waiting. I've heard that it had something to do with construction, that the Cape Main line was ready, but was not quite ready yet, but the Framingham Secondary was. But still, I just found it kind of odd that, why is it that this project is going forward when back in April, Frank DePaul, the MBTA GM, was like, oh no, it makes no sense. It doesn't, there's no economic sense to it. Why are we doing that? Why is that prioritized over Buzzards Bay? Also,
and your question is, I just want to make sure we get everybody in. So why are they moving forward with this project? And
As opposed to?
Yeah, as opposed to the Buzzards Bay one. That's my first question. The second one is, okay, so you address the driveway into Lewis Y, but what about the sidewalk? Because, I didn't see anything about them putting any gates over the sidewalk there, and, there are idiots. People are going to go run for that train, run for the train, but they'll just like, oh, maybe I can get across it before the train hits, and, even when the train's coming, I've driven the train in the front many times. I've seen plenty of people just like, last second. Also, why can't you build a platform? I actually know about how much it would cost to build a new platform. I remember reading somewhere that was like 2004 thing as the MBTA was looking at building a new platform at Walpole Station. I think the cost was $2 million. Once the Natick Center gets redeveloped, Walpole will be the busiest station in the system without ADA accessibility. And so, you're going to have to upgrade that station anyway. If you really must go through Foxboro, why can't you just plop the platform down Lewis Y? 27, I know MassDOT is different from the MBTA. I don't know how finances work up there, but up in 10 Plaza, but it seems like, why can't a new platform get included in this project? Why don't I have the money for it?
thank you.
Very good question.
Matt?
Good evening, Matthew Furley for 15 Greenwood Road. I actually live right downtown, and one of the reasons why I bought in Walpole was because of the train. And I do want to address, I know you guys are, it's not the most pleasant meeting, but I do want to let you guys know that the guys that run the trains, your conductors, okay, the people on the train, they take the brunt of the difficulties that you've had, okay, but they're great guys, okay, and those of us that do commute, we appreciate their work. So my father would say the rest of you, I'm not real sure about, but what I'm hearing here, when you were asked about the cost, there was kind of some hemming and hawing, and Mr. Snuffer had produced a picture where it looks like work has already been started. There seems to be a kind of a theme of lack of preparation. This kind of, we'll get to it when we get to it. My main concern when it comes to risk mitigation, and this is a question both sides here, is you have convergence of trains here. You've got most of your trains out in this part of the state are running east-west. Now you have some trains running north-south, and those trains actually meet in Walpole. And the chances of an accident are heightened because of that. What is the risk mitigation? Because the town of Walpole would be the first responders on this, and any type of fire or accident there would actually cut off that end of town. So does a train accident facilitate more public service equipment? What is the response plan? Thank you.
Sure they have a plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fernley. To your first question, in the MassDOT capital plan that was adopted last year, there was money in the budget for continued upgrades of the Framingham secondary line. I was part of the meetings with the Walpole legislative delegation in 2015, in which we met with them and discussed slowing down this process and bringing it to a halt. One of the things that we made clear at that time, that we've made clear since, is that routine maintenance work and ongoing maintenance work, the replacement of ties, the replacement of rail, would continue to be ongoing. It's a MassDOT-owned asset. It is incumbent on us, now that the state owns it, now that the Commonwealth owns it, to make sure that that is upgraded and safe for travel. That's not only safe for the train, for the operators, but as well as for the direct abutters. So with that, to answer the second part of your question, turn that over to Ryan.
So to answer your question about trains meeting at Walpole, today across the commuter rail network, we have several locations where upwards of 20 to 30 trains a day meet, whether that's freight trains, meeting passenger trains, passengers meeting passengers. And through the already existing safeguards, operating rules, the existing signal systems that won't allow track switches to be thrown in conflict with another movement, like today at Walpole where you have the Framingham secondary cross over the Franklin line. All of the switches in that area, there's a train there, and if someone was to vandalize or tamper with one of those switches, there's actually an electric lock that will lock up that switch. So those fail-safes that you asked about, they're already in place today.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Brian Hart, I live at 4 Oriole Lane. I also grew up in West Roxbury at the Highland T Station. I grew up with the commuter rails, and we are totally inadequately prepared. There was fences for miles. There's also holes in those fences. I grew up playing on those train tracks. Your kids will too. And I remember walking, fastest way to go to Rosendale was to go right down the tracks. Kids go on tracks. It's a slow train now. You won't even hear it. You don't. And when I grew up, the train stations were closer than what they are now. This thing will be flying. You won't even hear the thing. By the time you hear it, it's too late. And you gotta have your kids out there. Because no matter what, kids jump fences. 40 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour, it doesn't matter. They're not gonna stop. The poor conductor's gonna have to go home. You know, it's a lot of things to think about. The little crossing thing, I wouldn't even worry about that. It's everybody's house, it's my house. All the other people that their kids are gonna jump right back in the backyard. There's nothing in between us right now. I understand. They want to increase their services. Services are horrible. I grew up in West Roxbury, right up the street from the train station. I never took the commuter rail. I work on time. I still don't take it. I'll never take it. If I have to take it, I know I'm going to be late. Why would you increase something that's always wrong?
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kathy Carney, and I live at 15 Audubon Drive with my husband Jack. We just bought our house about a year and a half ago, and we knew at the time that the CSX rarely ran behind it. We were told that it only ran about 4 times a day. It wasn't really long. However, we've gotten used to the train running behind it. What we didn't get used to is the CSX train sitting there at Humvees, waiting and running across the street to Rico's to get their pizzas and get their salads and everything else, right? You know what I'm talking about. I had to call the train master at least 4 times in 1 week to make them stop, sitting in front of my house, just sitting there. That was happening just with the CSX. Now the concern is with the commuter line that's going to be coming by. As Mr. McDonald said, I'm the house that has no hill. We just did substantial landscaping, we just put in an in-ground swimming pool, saying we want to make Walpole our home. This is where we want to raise our daughter. And then along comes this, which as projects we weren't told about, kids are always on the tracks, always, whether it's winter or summer, and they're not just riding in anybody on the hills or on the Audubon Drive on that side. They're on the tracks. People are walking on there all the time. Kids are playing on there all the time. And you're right, nobody's going to hear that train. I one time decided to walk the tracks and I was a teenager. Biggest mistake I ever made was to go up there. And those areas are very tight. There are a lot of streams that are around that area, and I'm wondering, does conservation get involved just at all, or do you guys just get bypassed it?
We do not bypass environmental requirements, but since we are in an active right-of-way, there will be a different level of permitting probably for the existing tracks than for anything that would be beyond the existing tracks. So for instance, the bridge that Ryan mentioned, that would be fully reviewed. But in terms of putting new ballast or ties or rail in, that would probably not rise to a permitting level. But those are, again, all those environmental questions are part of the design decisions that would have to be made over the next year or so.
Now, when you talk about that you're going to do something about safety, couple of questions. One is, I saw that you talked about on Spring Street, in that area, putting up some kind of fencing. Are you going to be putting up fencing on our lawn? And also make sure that the kids are not going to be cross over the tracks to get hurt?
And then if we can go to another question after that.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we're very willing to work with all the abutters to target those areas that are really in need of some sort of fencing. And with that also comes some enforcement as well between local police, transit police, and the state police as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Berry, 19 Shoefelt Road. I thank you for coming. I know this is not an easy meeting for all of you. And talking with my friends and neighbors here, I'm a huge advocate for public transportation. I go to Somerville, that's where my work is, and if I could take the commuter rail there, that would be an amazing thing. The state recently took over a lot of buildings where my work's headquarters are, and the reports go anywhere from $50 million to $300 million and our taxpayers' money that we are paying and our kids are going to be paying for years for that Green Line extension. And I'm not even sure where in the process the state is on that. For a lot of us out here, I only know one person so far that this would benefit, and they don't even want to take this commuting line because the line that it's going to be on has been so problematic that she actually takes another line. It seems like if you're going to make this huge investment that you would correct the problems that exist and where the investments were already made and in congested areas like the city where they need more stops. I have to leave my house by 5:45 in the morning to get to Somerville by 7. If I leave at 7, I don't get there till 9 or 9:30. This line will do nothing for people like us who don't just go to South Station. I mean, there's not an easy way from South Station to get very many other places in the city. And so I think this is a much bigger problem than just Walpole or Foxboro. I think this is a very big problem for the entire state and all of the taxpayers. You know, in my family, we work 2 jobs. Most of our friends on our street work 2 jobs. This is taxpayer money that we're paying, and our kids are going to be paying millions and millions of dollars for a long time in a community that doesn't even want this. The bigger thing and the personal thing, well, I guess that is the big thing, how we all want to see our money spent. But the personal level is a lot of us here, everyone has been talking about the abutters and the fear of, you know, the crossing right here to this, to the school. That terrifies me. And It terrifies me even more where you talk about the train crossings. I'm sorry, not the train crossings, with all of the abutters in the backyards. You know, one kid's ball goes in that backyard and a kid is out there. And that's all of our kids. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Donna Pine, and I'm on 39 Sheffield Road in South Walpole. I want to make a couple more points. She mentioned the reason the pilot started was because of an interest, okay? I find that a little bit hard to believe because I went to the Foxboro meeting and where are all those people who are interested? Because the town hall where we had our meeting was not very big. And they even expressed they can't even get the people to come to town meetings. So if they wanted this train so badly, where are they? Okay, that's number one. Number two is that I'm not a business person, but who in their right mind would spend so much money to trial something for 11 months and it's going to go away. It's been my experience. I've been an MBTA rider on and off since 1977. Every pilot program has always either ended up permanently. And number three, is the MBTA going to pay for everybody's foundation? Is the house, because with the vibration, I don't have any cracks in my foundation, but going at that speed, because I measured my house from the edge of the railroad track, that's under 100 feet. That's not a lot. And number four, which is another bothersome, everybody saw the slider up there at the beginning, where she said that you wanted economic growth. Well, I have young people, young children that are working, and I cannot see young people coming out here for a job for economic growth, where all the money and all the jobs are in Boston. So, you know, for those few hundred people that want to get to Boston a little quicker, I mean, it seems like there's a much more of an assay and a headache. And at our expense, the only people that gain from it is Foxboro. We don't gain nothing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Fitzpatrick. I live at 3 Sheffield Road, and I'm definitely against the train tracks. One of the things, economic growth, a couple years ago, I saw an article in regard to the new Megaplex crafts shops and about how it's lackluster. It offers nothing new to anyone, anywhere. They are all chain shops that people can go to anywhere. That's why he wants the train tracks. One, I think Kraft is looking to buy a property, create housing, create the need for this train, because there is no need for this train. There was a 2002 study on the Fairfield track that is underutilized. So it's going through Mattapan and all the other sections. Bus riders. Bus riders are the people that this Fairfield track goes through. Have you attracted bus riders to this line that you supposedly want to enhance that's underutilized? This 2002 study said it would cost $96 million to increase ridership in the existing area. So now you want to bring this line down to an area that supposedly is going to have great economic development for, more Bed Bath & Beyonds, more Victoria's Secrets. I mean, what more do we need that any other area doesn't have? We have a football stadium. That's it. And if Kraft had his way, it would have been in Boston. And I'm really sorry it didn't go there, because then the train would have gone there.
Thank you. Sir? Yeah, we have about 8 minutes left, so we're going to try to get as many questions as possible. Please. Yeah, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Valentin, 181 Spring Street. So, gentlemen,
I just saw your pilot program, and my opinion is that you have no starting point. You showed us what is your point of view, and I didn't see anything about my point of view. In this regard, I have 3 questions for you, and I think that your pilot project suffers a lack of professionalism. I'm talking about the measurement. Question number 1. Did you measure the level of vibrations around the truck after you start your program? What kind of units you used? Did you perform any statistics, like taking average values, variances, some processing of data? Number 2, did you measure the level of the low frequency noises that penetrate very easily wooden homes? What kind of units you use or expert organization? Number 3, about the air pollution. What is your prediction? How you measure in what units all of these pollutions? And if I generalize this, where is the threshold that you should never exceed? Did you come out with the idea of threshold, which means never go above? I didn't see that in your project, so it tells me nothing. And another generalization that I'd like to make is, you say we'll do this, 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 and this, and you have you and us. What about Massachusetts general law, say part 1, chapter this, and this? How you pair your plans to the legislation? Because now you have you and us, but if you go in more professional way, you will have you and us, and next to us will stay the law, and you can't go against the law.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
It's very important. And just one more statement, 30 seconds. I assume that you will be running locomotives equipped with diesel engines. Where you're going to? In China, people designed magnetic levitation trains, new technologies, green, clean, and blah, blah, blah. And you propose to run old-style, filthy diesel engines. Is this America? Or? Please take it over. Thank you.
Hi, Frank Tanny, 47 Audubon Drive. We're all assuming that this pilot program is going to be jammed down our throat, it's going to be a success. We haven't got a choice, we've got to accept it. You're going to be running about 8 to 9 trains 2 ways a day. After the pilot program, yes or no, could there be more than those 8 trains a day? Yes or no? Yes or no? In permanent service, yes. It could be more. In the future.
So the answer to the question is yes, it's possible with permanent service. Okay.
So there could be more than the 8 trains a day, plus the 4 freight trains that are running now, right? So that's 16 times for the passenger trains and 8 times for the freight trains now, and it could be more. 2 years ago, they told us that the leg from Walpole to Framingham could potentially be open for passenger trains also, that could potentially add more trains coming to Foxboro. Am I right? Yes or no?
Priscilla Mackenzie's in line, she's going to be last.
Potentially, yes or no?
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Sure. I didn't want to say.
The principal's going to kill us.
So we could have more than
Oh, it's, yeah, it's
the
very
8 that we know of through the pilot, plus the 4 stock trains coming through this intersection here. 20 times a day now, this intersection is going to be affected. In the future, it could be much more. Each time a train goes through this intersection, how long is that intersection closed for? A minute? Minute and a half? Okay. With the stock trains, a lot longer, right? We have a fire station 100 feet away that 20 times a day could be affected in responding to a fire, safety hazard, somewhere in this section of town, 20 times a day during the pilot program, and could be affected much more in the future. You got to think about that. How is that fire engine going to get to this side of the tracks when that train is going through that station?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Priscilla Mackenzie. I'm on Shoot Belt Road. I have propane tanks in my backyard, which kind of scares the hell out of me. You know, through this whole thing, I am amazed at the lies I've heard, and it breaks my heart. You know, I was here 2 years ago, and we gave it hell, and you know, we were told that we really had a say, and I don't feel that we do. I feel that there's been a lot of underhanded action going on here. You know, and you know, for one thing, the Foxboro meeting the other night, that blew me away. All those people that got up and said, how wonderful this will be. I'll just cross the track, and I park people in my yard. And, you know, I can just go on the train. I don't even think they had a clue that it only went to South Station. You know, so it's a train that goes from Foxboro to South Station, and that's it. Let's get all those people, you know, and bring them to Foxboro. I don't know, I don't see it happening. David Moeller was there the other night, and the questions that were asked of Astrid, the questions in regards to the plans from 2 years ago, which she said she had no idea, she wasn't in that realm of time. He was there, he could have answered the questions, and he chose not to. I have a friend, Andrea, here that I love this. She simply says, you know, David Moeller, thank you for the reply. Is the commuter rail scheduled to start regular or test service to Gillette Stadium? This is dated September 16th. And on September 12th, September 12th of 16, on September 12th of 16, David Moeller replies, there are currently no plans to run commuter rail service to Gillette. I mean, come on, you know? I mean, I don't like lies, and this is a lie, and David Moeller, you are a liar.
So the MBTA has asked for some metrics, and I just wanted to take an opportunity to suggest some metrics, okay? So 51 households that directly abut the train station are going to suffer noise. One property owner is going to benefit. 51 households in town are going to suffer vibration. One owner of one billionaire is going to benefit. 51 households may have their property values be reduced, and one billionaire's property is going to increase in value. Those are the metrics that I hear tonight, and that's why we got to stop this train.
Before I close the meeting, Mr. Berry?
Thank you, members of the board, and again, thank you, members of the public, for coming here tonight and taking time to let us know how you feel. Again, I know we were here 2 years ago. I wasn't with DOT then, Astrid wasn't with DOT then, but we're here today, and we understand your concerns. We appreciate your taking the time to relay them to us. I do want to let you know next steps in the process. One of the reasons why some of the questions tonight we weren't able to answer is because this is the initial step. It does not make any sense for us to move this any further until the blessing or approval or disapproval of the Fiscal and Management Control Board is given. That will likely be presented to them within the next 30 days. As soon as that is scheduled, it will be incumbent on me to let your legislative delegation know, as well as town officials. Those meetings are open to the public, and as soon as we have that information, we'll certainly let the town know. Again, I know this is not an easy issue, but I appreciate everyone's time today and for that constructive criticism. And Selectmen, thank you.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to the Mass DOT people. You know, Mike, Astrid, Brian, Jason, I do believe that through communication, we can sometimes reach a better conclusion. And I have to give them a lot of credit for coming. They had to know that it wasn't going to be pleasant. They've been here, they've been polite, they have really listened. And I give them a lot of credit for doing that, and I just wanted to let them know that I do appreciate them coming. They could easily have blown us off, and they didn't. And hopefully we can make what looks like a bad situation for Walpole somewhat better through some more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we conclude, a couple questions. When is the DOT meeting?
It hasn't been scheduled yet. The FMCB by statute is required to meet just about every week, 3 times a month. So they have several meetings left in December. So it would either occur the 12th, the 19th, and there may be an additional meeting after Christmas. So when that agenda is on their agenda, we will let you know well in advance. As soon as we know internally, before it's even posted, we will make sure we let the legislators.
Yeah, please. The legislative body as well as our town administrator, that would be helpful. And also, as Selectman Gallivan said, you came and you listened and you wanted an audience, and I think you've heard Walpole's concerns. There are several more questions that need to be answered, and I would ask, what is the best way for those questions to get to you and responses back to those people?
The best way, really, I mean, we all work together. They can either be filtered through your legislative delegation. They could certainly be communicated directly to me through the Office of Legislative and Community Affairs. We will make sure that the appropriate subject matter experts, be it Brian, be it someone else that works in environmental or legal, get those answers to you. So whatever the town finds is the easiest way. We work with legislative staff that's here, Bill, and I think Ms. Mark Hogan. So whatever you guys think is the best way to get in touch with us, enough people have our contact information, we'll be sure to respond.
Okay. We'll figure out the best channel, and then what?
Was there a meeting though on the 12th?
It hasn't been
It hasn't.
No, it hasn't been sent. So we'll work out the best channel to funnel questions to you, and we would appreciate a speedy answer to those questions. So, with that, the Board of Selectmen want to thank all of you for coming this evening. We wanted to hold it at Boyden, so we want to thank the principal of Boyden School, Mr. Dearborn, and thank you coming out tonight. This is obviously an incredibly important issue for our town, and the Selectmen thank you for your input, your concern, and we're going to do our best to make sure that your questions are answered. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, and good night.